Hello, hello, and welcome to our final Black Girl Magic Book Chat Women's History Month edition episode. I think these are called episodes. In any case, welcome. I have had an excellent time this month sharing these stories with you all. If you are new or you've only watched a couple of these, for the past few years, every March, I, Larissa, who is the coordinator of the African American Resource Center for the Tulsa Library, have been reading stories by and about Black girls and Black women in an effort to showcase their stories, their underheard stories, in honor of Women's History Month. And so I just shoot some books by folks and I read them and I try to sort of read books across spaces, across topics to really share the breadth and the depth of the stories of Black women and girls. This past month, I've read 5 books and the topics have looked like the effects of colonization, the effects of strict adherence to religion, discrimination in the arts and in the workplace, postpartum depression, mental health issues, sex work, abuse at the hands of people in authority. They've been all over the place, and it's been hard in some ways, but really, really gratifying to really just kind of know and understand more about women who look like me. This last book I read, interestingly enough, has kind of touched on a little bit of a lot of these topics that we looked at from these other books, which has been really interesting. It was not quite the book that I imagined, although to be fair, I don't know really what I imagined, but I did like it. So this time I read The Library Thief by Kuchenga Shenjé. I might have mispronounced that. I was supposed to practice and I didn't. I'm so sorry, but their name is right here, so look it up. I'm so sorry, but I like the book. I read The Library Thief, and it was set in Victorian England, somewhere in the mid to late 1800s, maybe early 1900s, though I really think mid to late 1800s, somewhere in there. I don't think they ever give us the actual date, or they may. Hold on, let's look and see. 1896. See? Late 1800s. Okay, so around 1896, 97. This book follows Florence. This is Florence, I assume, who is the daughter of a bookbinder, and she is a talented bookbinder herself. She has been, so at the beginning of the story, she has been caught in a compromising position with a young man, and after he says that he won't marry her, this young man, her father has decided that she has been sullied, though that's not the word he uses, and he kicks her out of the house. With nowhere to go, she makes her way to Rose Hall, the home of Francis Belfield, to intercept a commission to work in his library and repair books so that he can eventually sell them. So, like I said, her father's a bookbinder. He fixes books. She knows the trade. And her father and Lord Belfield have come to an agreement that Lord Belfield is going to send him books to be repaired, and then he will send them back, etc., etc. She goes and she's like, hey, my dad actually sent me to do this work. I'll stay here and complete, your library. And Lord Belfield is obviously not an idiot. I don't like to use that word, but he knows, right? He figures that out, but he lets her stay. And so she kind of moves into this house as a part of his household staff in a way. And then life happens. So Lord Belfield is widowed, and his wife dies under what Florence decides is mysterious circumstances. And so because she has decided that this death of his wife was mysterious in some way, she starts to go looking through Lady Persephone, that was her name, her things, trying to uncover her murder. But like when you go looking for things that are actually none of your business, Florence finds way, way more than she bargains for. And then she, because of that, she is a lower class individual living in this upper class household and is really learning the ways of these people. She begins to feel in some ways like a pawn at the hands of Lord Belfield and his ridiculous, and by ridiculous I mean horrible, brother Chester, and his sister-in-law, Chester's wife, Violet. In this book, slavery is still the law of many lands. And in the places where it's not, or maybe not the law in many lands, but we're right off of it, I guess. Let's be more truthful. We're right off the hands of slavery in many lands. And so in these places, in a lot of places that are not predominantly Black or African or whatever word they're given, Negro, at that time, Black people are considered fourth and fifth class citizens, not even second class, right? Like they are considered the lowest of the low. The way that people, and they show it in this book, the way that people in England and in elsewhere speak so casually of Black inferiority is actually insane. The character, like they just view them. They speak of their lack of intelligence. They speak of they're not intelligent, but they're wily, right? They're manipulative. The women are lustful and are they use their wiles to try to ensnare these unsuspecting white men. That's the way that they are spoken about. They are violent. They are in the same way that even today, a lot of Black people are spoken of this way. And it's just so normal. Even one of the characters, Wesley, who also works at Rose Hall and becomes a good friend of Florence's, he even asks Lady Persephone's handmaid, I think that's what they're called, the one who's like right there all the time. He asks her if Black women, or if it's true that Black people had tails. So that's kind of what we're working with in this book. And then there's also other themes that we look at, like with Wesley. From the very beginning of this book, they speak of his effeminacy, setting the stage for conversations about homosexuality as well as transgender identity. We learn about other characters in this book who are homosexual, who share a same-sex affinity for one another, women of means and class who have to keep their love a secret for fear of labels, for fear of punishment, because in this time, and even still in some people's mind, homosexuality is a deviance. It is something to be afraid of. It's a mental illness to that was the way that it was viewed, and so people would be ostracized from their communities. People would be put into mental institutions, psychiatric institutions for being homosexual, and let's not even go with transgender. And so, we speak of those types of issues in this book, which I really appreciated. What was most interesting to me was the way that race was discussed and the way that people view themselves and they view others in regards to race. In this book, most of the characters are white, or so we think. We learn of characters who are light enough to pass, and they do so in order to secure wealth for their own families. There are a character or two who pass and then never speak to their families again because passing and being white in this space feels better because they are treated better. And they don't have necessarily to go through the same ills that Black people do. Even poor white people, right, don't have to go through these same ills. And so they choose to pass. We also see a character, and this is a spoiler, so for the next 5 seconds, Florence. We see a character who has lived her life with no knowledge of her Blackness other than her kinky hair, right? She has spent her entire childhood having her hair hot combed, which Black women, or even some Black gentlemen, maybe y'all had a bunch of hair as a kid too. I don't know. But like, y'all look at my hair, right? I used to get my hair hot combed when I was a little girl too. And It did not feel good. And so I just can't imagine this happening, back in the day. And she even spoke about how her dad or grandma would kind of purposefully burn her. And I think sometimes my mama did that to me too, but don't tell her I said that. So she spent her childhood getting her hair hot combed, um, and she did have skin, and I think that was slightly darker than her counterparts, because she mentioned being called like blackie or, other words like that. But she grew up thinking that she was just white, that she was just, I guess, slightly darker than everybody else. And so those were really no concern to her, especially because her dad was white, her grandma was white. So that's what she knew. Um, and she thought that because she had been born in Jamaica, they were just being ignorant. But then she's in a space with other black people and notices some similarities and notices the way that they respond to her, because they can see in her features. They see the nose, right? They see the mouth, and they see those features that are contributed to people of African descent, that are and so it's the way that they look at people of even lighter skin, and they know that there's African in the blood. But when you don't know, you don't know. And so this character has to come to terms with the way that she has been raised, the way that the people around her speak ill of a part of her heritage, and what that new knowledge means for her moving forward. And there's a lot of little things, little pieces, that I think are important, that really gets you thinking. I always have to share also my insights on the writing as well. I thought that the writing was very engaging. I obviously do not know if there's accuracy in the dialect of this space, of this time. They were near Liverpool, England. So I don't really know, obviously, how they were speaking in 1896 Liverpool. But the way it reads is just far enough removed from the way that we speak that I can believe it. It felt like the way a layperson, a person of more limited means, would speak. Like the people who were not born in upper class society. And so that made it easier to follow, because I think of like books like Wuthering Heights and those that I read back in school, and the language is a little bit more difficult for this millennial child to understand. And a lot of women who wrote back in the day were of some means, right? And so that language is reflected in that. So I do think that it's written in a way that's supposed to be the layperson, because our main character is not upper crust. Even though she was born to a father in a trade, they're still not of high society. I found myself like adequately annoyed or frustrated or amused or even sad, in some parts, and I think that's a credit to the author. There are some hard parts to this book. That's been a theme all month. Like some difficult things to read about our characters. There is a on-page sexual assault, rape, really, and that gets glossed over by the characters in this book, because they were allowed to gloss over these things back then, right? These things happen, and you kind of just let it happen, and somehow the woman was always at fault, and you see that here. But I like to think that at the end, Florence gets to see people in this book be the folks in this book gets their comeuppance, if you will. Is that right? we see them, especially some of the people that you want to see, and maybe not to the extent that I wanted it, but that's just because I want it worse. But you do see them kind of have to navigate. You see her kind of get her revenge at the end. So I like that. So it felt good at the end, because I did cry at one point, but I felt like at the end I was like, okay, I can be satisfied at that. This, y'all, this was a great end to a great collection of works. I hope I have convinced you all to add one or two or all of them to your TBR, to your to be read lists. If ever you want to reach out to me, you can absolutely do that. Go to tulsalibrary.org/African dash American Resource Center and find my contact info, or you can just, put in African American Resource Center into our search engine, and I'm there with a little picture of my face. And below it has my contact information. I love chatting about books. I love chatting about Black American history and culture and about the work that the library does, because I'm so honored to work here and fascinated by the work that I do, and I love it. So I will see you all in October, where I'll be reading books in the thriller, mystery, and horror genres, because that's another genre that I think is underrepresented by Black folks and other people of color. And so until then, have a beautiful day, and thank you for watching Black Girl Magic Book Chat Women's History Month edition.